How's it going, everybody? This is Carlos, one of your hosts of the Bring on the Blitz podcast. And as you can see, it's only Rios and I today. The other guy, Poppy, isn't here. Thank God, because he brings down the show. Rios, how's it going, bud?
Oh, look, another flag. False start on Tunsil.
Exactly. That game had more flags in it than the United Nations. But hey, we'll talk about that going in a little deeper into the show. But for now, wow, what a game! It's not what I don't think a lot of people had that in their bingo card. But let's do the intro and then we'll deep dive right into it. Let's hit it. All right, it's lots to unfold, lots to unpack. Before we deep dive into it, Rios, I mean, I I I didn't really expect the Texans to just get a beatdown like this and just kind of a lot of it had to do with their own mistakes, man. Did you expect? I didn't see this coming up. I thought, and I think a lot of us agreed in last week's show, it would be a it would be a win, an ugly win, but it would be a win, and it would be kind of close. Like I didn't expect it to be this much of a beatdown on the team. What is your take on this one, Rios?
Well, we got the ugly part, right? It just wasn't a win.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just a straight shellacking with all caps. I mean, that was just there. I think I sent you guys.
Sorry, what did you say? It was a straight what?
Shellacking.
Nice. We're adding that word to the dictionary, to our dictionary at least. Go on.
Yeah, that picture I sent you guys in the group chat. The Texans' game plan was, it was a picture of a person shooting themselves in the foot. Like, that was literally the game plan, and it was a little concerning afterwards. Like some of the quotes from like Bobby Slowick and Laramie Tunsil, like with Tunsil, for example, is just no accountability. The guy had 7, penalties out of the 10 the team had, which is ridiculous. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But with Bobby Slowick, one of his comments was that he had said, with Brian Flores' defense, you don't really have like a plan. Like, you had an entire week to prepare.
Sounds like they did.
How do you not have a plan? Like, I get he runs an exotic defense, and there's a lot of where they simulate a pass rush, but then they all drop back into coverage. Like, I get that, but you gotta have some type of plan in place.
Absolutely. I mean, I figured you would think that there should be a plan in place because look what they did to the 49ers, the 49ers team just the week prior. Yeah, I mean, and you can't really sit there and say, well, the Texans didn't have Joe Mixon. The 49ers didn't really have Christian McCaffrey, and they still got some success running on that side of the ball,
They had over 100. Yeah, Jordan Mason, an undrafted free agent, had over 100 yards.
Exactly. It's like a plethora of different things that it was Murphy's Law. Anything that could go wrong went wrong. Exponentially. Yes, exponentially. Another word that we're adding to our dictionary here at Bring on the Blitz. A lot of words that are being learned when Poppy's not here. That's a sign.
Yeah, we want our listeners' IQs to go up.
To soar, yeah. But yeah, nonetheless. All right, I'm gonna deep dive in because I feel that I kind of mentioned this last week, and I think we all kind of did. We expected some false starts from Laramie Tunsil, right? And because there you go. Because of the loudness of the stadium, I think we all were in agreement. Hey, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen regardless. We just didn't expect it to be this bad.
Yeah, credit to the Vikings fans. That was a really loud stadium. Yeah. You could feel the reverberation through the TV screen.
Yeah, no, they keep it loud, and I think I think they have the best since the merger, since the merger. From what I understood, one of the crazy stats that they have like the best home field, home win advantage, even with the old bubble stadium that they had before. Like that Vikings fan base is strong. I'll give them that. Like it's strong. They're a very lively crowd. A little bit different than than some NFL teams. I think you see it with like Kansas City. You see it with Seattle. You see it with the Vikings. I mean, I can't think unless I'm missing another fan base that gets that loud. I mean,
the loudest. And
yeah,
I interacted with a few of the Vikings fans, during the week on Twitter, and they're very pleasant. They're very polite.
Yeah.
Well, I think Stephon Diggs had called it Minnesota nice, like when he was talking about the fans, like they're very nice people. Like, you know, I was a little surprised. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks, guys.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to I wanted to address, like, my biggest concern has been since the beginning of since game one, really, the pass protection for CJ Stroud. To me, that's been a huge area of concern. So we'll talk about our area of concerns, I guess, now. That's been a huge area of concern for me because, I mean, gosh, CJ Stroud got sacked 4 times in this game alone. Like, I'm looking at some of these stats right now, and he was pressured 17 times, which is like 44.7%, and sacked 4 times. Dude, he's been like sacked at least 3 times this year. Like, I think DJ Bienemy on Twitter said he's on pace to being sacked 56 times if they continue it this way. It is they're gonna get this kid hurt.
Yeah.
They're gonna get this kid hurt, and then you're gonna have bigger problems if you don't protect CJ Stroud. Like, don't get me wrong, even after all that, CJ Stroud had a pretty decent game.
Turnovers, he did the best he could with the limited amount of time he had to get the ball out.
Yeah, exactly. I exactly
play calling, because it was I don't get what the game.
Yeah, so we'll get into the play call in a sec. It's just because it's gonna be your department, right? That's on you. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, that's you. Okay, so honestly, dude, like, when I'm looking at CJ Stroud, I see this kid like doing what he could for that game. I mean, if I'm looking at CJ's stats alone, I think he was 20 of 31, 215 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. That first interception, ball was tipped, and Cruiser Hill, which an ex-Texan, by the way, got the interception. And then on the second one, that was straight up on CJ. He recognized it, and that was like towards a pivotal point. Revenge game for the ex-Texans players, right? Revenge game for the ex-Texans players. Cruiser Hill, Bernard
had the game of his life. 3 sacks, a bunch of quarterback hits, quarterback hurries. He was living in that backfield.
Yeah, he was feasting. And honestly, this is one of those things, and it goes back to my concern with the offensive line. And I think this is also going to tie into your one of your concerns, I think. I thought lining up Kate Stover against Jonathan Grenard was odd, to say the least.
In his mind, he's like, the level of disrespect.
The level of disrespect that Jonathan Grenard, not only did he not get signed, like they put a rookie tight end
pass blocking
who isn't good at pass blocking. Yes, like they put a rookie tight end in front of him, and they expected him to just like, oh no, hold on, bro, I got this. I'm gonna block the mess out of Jonathan Grenard. No,
that did not happen.
Right, and like you hear the record scratch in the back. This is where I messed up. Or you're probably wondering how I got here. Yeah.
With Kate Stover on the ground. You're probably wondering how this happened.
Dude, Kate Stover got run down. That was one particular play. I'm trying to remember. Jonathan Bernard just literally bulldozed him to the ground. Kate Stover was like, almost never had this happen to me before, man. That was insane.
He's a big guy, and he just tossed him like a rag doll. Like, it wasn't even competitive. I'm like, dude.
That was a big problem. I think you had a lot of CJ Stroud. Once you couldn't get the run game going, I think we also shed some light on this the last show. It was like if they do, make CJ one dimensional, that's how it's going to be. He's just going to be trying to scramble around, which we saw a lot of that. And trying to make plays, trying to make something out of nothing, because that's what CJ Stroud does, right? He just tries to make something out of nothing. Wasn't successful. I just think that in crucial situations, I mean, getting sacked 4 times in that game, and you're on pace for getting CJ Stroud sacked at 56 times a season. I think something's got to change, man. I don't know if it's the offensive line coach or what's happening there, but that offensive line is not protecting CJ Stroud, and that's going to be detrimental moving forward if that doesn't get fixed. But how do you fix an O-line in week 3? How does that get fixed?
And I think it ties into what my concern is, the play calling. All right, so you have a plethora of receivers, but we're running 12 personnel a large portion of the game. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, there's no reason you should have 2 tight ends out there. For those that don't know what 12 personnel is having 2 tight ends out there.
Tight ends on the field.
So you got Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, who's playing like a top 5 receiver at the moment, and Tank Dell, who had a bounce back game. It wasn't spectacular. It was a good bounce back for him. You got all those guys, all those weapons, all those guys that can create separation, that are great route runners, but we're running out 2 tight ends, not just 2 tight ends. If it was, Brevin Jordan, I can understand he's a little bit more seasoned, but Cade Stover, as much as he's, shown flashes here and there, like running him out there against a Brian Flores defense probably wasn't the debut that I would have went for. Because something that they could have done a little bit differently. I'd understand they got behind, but a little early, kind of threw off the game plan. But they could, again, if you can't get the run game going, an extension of the run game is short passes to the running back, which they didn't really attempt to do.
Which is why they have the type of running back that they have. Cam Akers can catch the ball.
Yes, there was like no creativity at all when it came to the play calling, and I know the criticism throughout the week, even like on ESPN, they kind of called Bobby Slowick out as well, saying, he runs on first down every single time, and he tried to change it up this time, but sometimes you don't want to overthink things.
Yeah.
Like, he was trying to get a little too cute with some of these plays on first down. I'm like, not against this defense.
No. They're a stellar defense.
Like, they have, one of the best defenses in the league so far this season. And they just, like I said, Bobby Slowick himself said he didn't have a game plan. And it's a little concerning because he's been getting out-coached quite frequently. And there's no adjustments. Like, usually at halftime, you make an adjustment. Hey, you know what? Let's change it up. But after the half, I didn't see any adjustments. It was just more of the same. But it was just, at that point, your defense is getting worn out, and they're struggling to stop Sam Darnold, and they just blew the game wide open in the second half, and it was a wrap after that.
I gotta say, they did fail to stop Sam Darnold. If the Texans would have stopped Sam Darnold, I think you have a different ball game too, because that's really it on the for Sam Darnold. If you stop him, Sam Darnold, to his credit, he's been playing lights out.
Yeah,
like he's been great ever since. I mean, I'm sure the Vikings right now feel like they struck oil getting him, I think, from the Jets, right?
Well, he was a free agent, but he was on the 49ers. And
okay, I apologize. Yeah, from the 49ers. But they feel like they struck gold because this guy's killing it right now.
Yeah, and they still got the rookie that they drafted in the first round. And, obviously he's injured, but,
right.
Probably him sitting and learning for a year wouldn't be the worst thing for him.
I think a lot of people counted the Vikings out once their quarterback went hurt, just because, Sam Darnold didn't really have much on his resume here and there. But I think, now that, I mean, this right here, that I would not doubt if he got a contract if he keeps it up. If he keeps it up, consistency is key.
Yeah, it's something that they had brought up during the week on different shows. When in regards to like quarterbacks being in the right spot. Like, look at Baker Mayfield. Dude was traveling all across the country, trying to find a home, and he landed in the right spot in Tampa, and he secured the bag, and he's having a pretty decent season.
I know it's one game, but look at Andy Dalton with the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy? I know it's just one game. Don't want to hype him up too much either because one game. But
they looked like they were dead in the water with their offense. They couldn't move the ball. They couldn't get anything going offensively. And then they insert Andy Dalton, and they win a game.
300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Isn't it crazy? I think it was over 300 yards, but it was. I know it was. He had reached 300 yards, but I know he had 3 touchdowns.
It was 3 and some change.
Yeah, but you and I have seen Andy Dalton play since the Texans Bengals 2011 2012 playoff stuff, right? And to see, be honest with you, at first I was like, Andy Dalton's still playing, and then it's like, who would have thought? And then he goes out and he's our age, really, well, my age, and he looks way younger than I do, Grays. Anyway, but the thing is, he's still slaying the ball out there for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in a offense that that looked like it was dead in the water, and then it was just gonna settle for like a first round or second round pick next season. Now, if he's consistent, if he keeps it up,
I mean, they're probably still picking in the top 10.
Yeah, they're still picking, but
well, no, Chicago's picking in the top 10 because Chicago owns their pick, so they don't have a reason to tank.
They don't, yeah. But nonetheless, it's like I was like, wow, the change was insane. But back to the Texans. Sorry, we just kind of went around the NFL for a little bit. Back to the Texans, though.
Yeah, going back to what you mentioned about the offensive line, the penalties, it's getting ridiculous.
There you go.
So to get a quote from D'Amico, and start quote, this is in regards to Laremy Tunsil knowing where to line up since he got a lot of false starts and illegal formations. His quote is, he knows where to align, and we just have to do a better job of getting it done, end quote. And I'm like, yeah.
What does that sound like to you?
Like calling him out, but like you have the ability to ask the referee, hey, am I lined up correctly? Just like with the receivers. So from what I've read, like there was no communication as far as him not being lined in the same spot. And someone actually took videos throughout from the first, second, and third quarter, and he was lined up in the same spot. They didn't call it at first, but then they started calling it. But they were saying that there was no warning. They never told him anything, which fine. But after the first, I don't know, two, maybe ask the ref, hey, am I okay? Like, communicate with the referees. Like, it's what they're there for. Just wild.
Yeah, look at the quote I just sent you.
Oh, so here's another quote. This one's from Laremy Tunsil himself. They tried to make an example out of us. The first 2 weeks, we lined up the same with no problem. Now it's a problem. I feel like somebody told them to make an example out of us. Got to call the same both sides.
I don't know about that, man.
Yeah, because I somewhat see it, like, because they didn't call it at first, but like at the beginning of the season, the league, they tell you what their rules of emphasis are, the hip drop tackle, the illegal formations. And when you look at the screen, Laremy Tunsil is lined up further back than everybody else, which I get from a strategic standpoint, gives you a little bit more time to like try to absorb that oncoming pass rusher. But again, it's an illegal formation, dude. Like, you got to be like, basically they want you to be all the guys lined up with the center. Like, you can't have one guy a little bit further up or another guy a little bit back, because they're going to flag it every single time, which they did yesterday. And it's not just here against the Texans; it's league wide. We see a lot of flags for illegal formation across the board.
I think initially that Ravens Kansas City Chiefs game had a lot of that in it.
Yeah, it was almost every other play they were throwing a flag for illegal formation. Yeah,
no, I agree. I don't necessarily agree with how he said it. It almost felt like there was really no accountability for those actions. I'll give you an example. I think you sent it to us too, and it was kind of blowing up today. Andre Ware's reaction to Laremy Tunsil getting the first one. And Andre Ware, was like, he gets it he said something on the lines of, he gets this every week, that there's no excuse. He's a Pro Bowl player. Like, he's used to that stuff.
Yeah, like, because I think it was Mike Tomlin. There was it was a couple years back. They had an issue where they were getting a lot of flags. So what they decided to do was have referees at their practice so they can, simulate game time situations where they can, try to clean up on some of these penalties. But like with Tunsil, like we've seen it for the last 3 years. Like, he's guaranteed at least 2 or 3 a game, and they were at the worst times. I think in our first 6 offensive series, he got 3 of them, and they were drive stallers, and they ended up, boggling down the drive, and we had to settle for They had to settle for a field goal on one of them, but Kaimi, uncharacteristically missed a 52, 53-yarder.
But that's bound to happen, though, right? That's bound to happen. Once in a while, you can miss a field goal that's over 50 yards. That, you know what I mean? Like, it isn't characteristic, yeah. But
it was characteristic. But I think it was just basically a sign of things to come when it came to this game. They're like, when your best player misses a field goal, you're in for a long afternoon, and they were.
And then, like, you had back-to-back play. I think there was one point when they were going to convert to first down, and then with the consecutive penalties they had, I think they were like at 3rd and 20 at one point or something along the lines. Man, it really took them out of whatever little momentum they were trying to get. it really took them out of that. Those penalties, like, it took them out of that, and it obviously sucks the life out of them too.
It did. So I got something from Seth Payne. So he had tweeted out yesterday. 3 of the first 6 Texans drives were killed by offensive pre-snap penalties. 3 drives. Those are if there are field goal drives, that's 9 points. If they were touchdowns, that's 21. It's a different ball game if they're able to.
Different ball game. It's competitive at that point.
They more than likely probably still lose yesterday, but it would have been a much more competitive game than what we had to endure for 3.5 hours yesterday.
At this point, it begs to differ. It's like my area of concern still stands at this point. It's the offensive line. Like, how does that get? I know for you as a coaching, but it all ties in. It really, if you look at the big picture, my concern, it all ties into the coach, to the offensive line coach, to Bobby Slowick again with the play calling. It all ties really back into those guys.
If you see your guys struggling to pass protect, simpler reads, quicker passes, get the ball out quicker, get some easy throws in there to get some momentum going and, get these guys' confidence going. But when you're trying to run 12 personnel and you're taking one of your 3 wide receivers off the field, you're just not doing yourself any favors at that point.
Yeah, the definitely. And then the run game couldn't get going either. I mean, Cam Akers had 9 attempts for 21 yards. It was averaging 2.3 yards per carry. His longest was of 9, but that was about it. CJ was in there for 12 yards. Taylor had 3, and British Brooks had 2 yards. I mean, there was absolutely no running game as opposed to them. M. Jones had 102 yards. Was averaging 5.4 yards per carry. He didn't have any touchdowns, but his yardage doesn't look bad at all. I mean,
and they didn't do themselves any favors with some of the penalties as well, because they put them in great field position.
Yeah. Exactly. It's
actually going back to the coaching. So something I found pretty interesting yesterday. Let me see if I can find it. Where is it at? Oh, so yesterday, Justin Jefferson, for some odd reason, was open every single play in the first half.
Oh, yeah.
And it was by design, which is the most mind-boggling thing I've ever read in my
best receiver in the league.
Arguably, the best receiver in the league. You would think maybe we should have someone covering him, someone not named Eric Murray, because that I don't know what he was doing in that end zone on the Justin Jefferson touchdown, but yeah,
he slipped if I'm not mistaken, but still, it was
he was about.
He landed on his knee. I saw that part.
He was about 5-6 yards and off coverage. I'm like, why are you in the back of the end zone?
You can't give him that much cushion, but yeah, the coverage needed to be better on him.
Yeah, so in the first half, he saw 5 targets, and all the receivers were playing soft coverage. There was at least a minimum of 5 yards of space for him to operate, which is bizarre. And he took advantage of that, as any team would. They took advantage of it.
Yeah.
So out of those 5 targets, 4 were for 70 yards and a touchdown. Now in the second half, they switched it up. He didn't have a catch in the second half because why? They decided, maybe we should start pressing him at the line of scrimmage, and made the world of difference. He had 1 drop in the second half, but other than that, no catches.
Yeah.
Amazing. Like,
that's, and it begs to differ now, because now you kind of almost have a perspective. A lot of people said the Texans are contenders, and to some people there still are. That anybody can have a bad game here and there, but I think the facts are facts here. I think they need to do something with that offensive line. It needs to be fixed if they want to be contenders. The play calling has to improve if they want to be contenders. They have the personnel, right? They have the personnel. It's just like something needs to happen in that aspect of the offensive line and the play calling ability when it comes to creativity, when you don't have a running back. This is the same type of offense that San Francisco is running here and there, give or take.
And they can find a guy off the street and turn him into a 100-yard rusher.
Exactly.
And it's crazy because the offensive line they invested heavily in that offensive line.
They did.
$188 million of the payroll goes to the offensive line.
I think last year you and I talked in some shows last season, excuse me, how we were actually that offensive line could stick together, even though it was kind of like random dudes, right? That were part of that offensive line. I thought last season's offensive line was decent. You know, it kept the Texans in games, specifically the Steelers game when they had just picked anybody.
You had, your third and fourth string tackles out there.
Yeah.
They held TJ Watt to 0 sacks.
Exactly.
No pressure at all that game.
Exactly. And then now it's like, what's happening? It's you upgraded your line. Like the Texans upgraded their offensive line, and yet they couldn't get anything going against that defense. Don't get me wrong, that defense is solid. I'm not taking any credit off of the Minnesota Vikings defense, but the fact that you invested so much on this offensive line and they're sacking CJ Stroud 3 to 4 times a game, and it's only week 3, dude. What's going on here?
Not just that, but they're not creating any holes in the running game either.
Yeah.
We knew like the run blocking wasn't the best, but certain running backs can, overcome that. Guys like Joe Mixon, he's a one-cut runner. He just needs a little bit of space, and he'll create something out of nothing. Cam Akers, he's still, working his way back from that Achilles. He's, more or less fully healed, but again, he has missed a lot of time. And I don't think going against the Vikings was the ideal situation to throw him out there, but I mean, they didn't have a choice, obviously.
The worst game he could have been thrown into, right?
Yeah.
But then that's the thing. After that, you what do you do? You got your two starters, just they're hurting. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know how much of a difference Dameon Pierce would have made in this game.
Yeah, it probably would have been similar to Cam Akers' stat line, or possibly a little bit lower yards. Yeah.
But nonetheless, this was definitely a game that Joe Mixon could have made a difference on. But we've seen what happens there. Honestly, my takeaways for now. Okay, so I think you and I discovered that. Let's look at the positives over here real quick. Actually, before we do that, I want to look at
the game is over.
Game's over. I want to talk about what D'Amico said real quick about the Vikings. Let me see. This was on today's press conference. He said on takeaways, they asked him on takeaways from the game against the Vikings. D'Amico said, start quote, "I think you can learn first and foremost how hard it is winning in this league, and you have to be on the details of your job every single time you step out there, especially when you're on the road. It is always harder playing on the road, so you definitely have to be on your assignments. Be where you are supposed to be, and you cannot hurt yourself. When you are going against a tough opponent, really good team, tough crowd, and you have to not hurt yourself, but find ways. Continue to help yourself and everybody playing together," end quote. I think that was pretty clear about the Texans shooting themselves in the foot.
Big time. On both sides of the ball. And I would take this as a learning experience. That film session on Monday, I'm sure that the coaches kind of chewed those guys out a little bit, or at least I would hope so, because that was not a whole lot of positives to highlight from the game. Like there was on either side of the ball. I mean, aside from holding Jefferson to 0 catches in the second half, but I mean, still couldn't stop Aaron Jones, couldn't stop Sam Darnold, and they were missing their number 2 receiver. Like that, there was no reason he should have lit those guys up. Correct. But I mean, Sam Darnold didn't have a ton of passing yards. I think he had less yards than CJ, if I'm not mistaken. But he had
as far as CJ, you're talking about the stats for CJ and Sam Darnold?
Yeah.
He did. Sam Darnold, I think it was 17 of 28, 181 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions.
And he had a pretty clean pocket. The pass rush just was not getting there yesterday. I mean, credit to Minnesota's offensive line. They did a great job of containing Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson and the defensive tackles, but they also were smart. They got rid of the ball quickly and they relied on the run game. Something that Houston just couldn't execute yesterday.
Yeah, they couldn't get the ball rolling on offense, and defense really all over the place. It was kind of a little bit of a mess. So yeah, those were some of the quotes for D'Amico about that. Okay, so he does have a quote though on the amount of pressures that CJ received. So they asked him how they correct the amount of pressures. So D'Amico said, start quote, The communication, everything with the stunts, it starts up front. It starts with the coaches. We have to make sure guys understand it, understand it, and make proper calls. So all the guys work together to see it the exact same way. All guys are communicating, not relying on person, but everybody communicating, working well together. Again, we know the issues. We have to get it fixed. We can't allow the same things to continue to happen, starting with the coaches, players. We have to take ownership as well as we have to get it fixed, end quote. So, I mean, he looks like it sounds like he understands it, but doesn't directly kind of answer. I feel like that it's obviously a broad answer, the typical answer that you're supposed to give, the very generic, the very generic answer. It starts with us. We have to fix it from the coaches down to the players, that style. But I just hope that you can, for Texans fans in general, I just hope that you actually see it being played out on the field. And hopefully this upcoming week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, there is some much improvement. But let's talk about the highlights, the things that the Texans did well. I can start it off, Rios, if you like.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I know you brought up Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. So one stat that I wanted to read is Will Anderson and Jr. and Danielle Hunter are currently both tied for 6th in pressures with 15 pressures. The Texans' investment in their defensive ends have actually been paying off. You didn't really see it much yesterday, but those guys are actually doing a pretty good job at getting to the quarterback. It's basically what was expected, but definitely big credit to the Vikings offensive line because they did help contain these two guys, which is a very tough task to do. The Texans front is probably one of the best that I've seen in a while. They do a great job. I mean, there was times when Sam Darnold did feel the pressure coming to him. But obviously overall it wasn't enough just because of everything that was that was happening really. But overall, I think they did fine. They did. The defense, I think, showed out. I mean, I think he had Will Anderson Jr. finish the game with 2 tackles, 1 solo tackle, and then 1 sack. Defensive end Derek Barnett recorded at least 1 sack also in each of the last 2 games, marking just the 2nd time in his career that he's recorded a sack in back-to-back games. Also finished the game with 3 tackles, 2 of them by himself, 1 forced fumble, and a sack. I think he's like at 28.5 career sacks. Derek Barnett. That was a good. That's one of those things that one of the guys that I wanted the Texans to bring back because he was pretty decent for them last season. Alshire, he led the team in tackles. He had 10, and 9 of them were by himself. 2 tackles for loss. 2 tackles for loss and a quarterback hit. And then even Jalen Petrie had 8 tackles. So 2 tackles for loss and 1 quarterback hit as well. So I mean, overall, I do think that's one of the bright spots. I know it's hard to see because of the score, but those guys, they're doing their job on defense. But it's just one of those things that Rios and I mentioned before in other shows when we talked about the Texans 2 seasons ago. What happens when your offense can't get rolling? Your defense is always out. They get tired and plays start happening against your defense, So
we saw that yesterday.
Yeah. Rios, what's your highlight?
I would say so I mentioned they did a lot of 12 personnel, but once the game was out of reach, they obviously went back to having the 3 wide receiver sets. And we saw the ball being distributed pretty evenly. Stephon Diggs ended the day with 10 catches, 94 yards, no touchdowns. Nico, I mean, he's just been on a tear lately. But he ended up with 4 catches, 86 yards. He was targeted 10 times, but they did a good job of containing Nico Collins. Like he should have honestly did more damage, but they did a good job of covering him. He was clearly the focal point of them trying to slow down CJ, which left Diggs open a lot because he was targeted 12 times and he turned those into 10 catches. And he got Tank Dell a little bit involved as well. He ended up with 6 targets, 5 catches, and 62 yards.
His best game of the season so far for Tank, right?
Yeah.
I know we're 3 games deep, but still, it was still pretty decent game for him.
But no, it was good to see them getting him a little bit more involved. Something I had mentioned last week was, I would like to see them try to create some more plays for Tank Dell because he's one of your best playmakers. He's he's very elite as far as his route running and creating separation. But they just, for some odd reason, they just don't really like have plays just specifically for him outside of those wide receiver runs, which I wish they would stop doing.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I forgot to mention one guy. I just realized Tim, our defensive tackle, the Texans defensive tackle, Tim Settle, had 3 tackles, 2 by himself, and 2 sacks. I forgot about that. So big shout out to him too.
Yeah, you can tell the strategy was to contain Hunter and Will Anderson. You got a sack, but I mean, other than that, it was it didn't matter in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. All right. And before we move on to the following week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, let's give out our standout shoutout salute. Who gets flowers this week for the Houston Texans? I'm gonna start off first, I guess. I'm gonna give my flowers to CJ Stroud. After the type of play, yes, he did have 2 interceptions. I get that point, but man, there was no quit in that kid. I don't want to say kid, that young man. There was no quit in that young man. He, regardless of the adversity thrown against him, especially throughout the week by people criticizing him for giving Caleb Williams some advice after the game, who perceived it as, CJ Stroud, what has he done in this league to make it to make him think like he can give advice to anybody else? I'll be honest with you, when I read that was a little bit infuriating, just because it's like CJ Stroud was giving somebody an advice, which is what I was giving to him when he was starting out in the league. Why would you not pass it forward? Like, I don't understand that.
Yeah, that was it. And it is crazy he had to come out with a press conference,
ridiculous.
Because he even said it himself. Like, I'm just trying to pay it forward, and like the guys last, gave me advice, paid forward to the rookies of this draft class.
Like if you're new into something and it's the big leagues or whatever, why would you not want advice? Like, I'm not saying Caleb didn't. I'm just saying, like, why would you perceive it at that? Because that's what CJ was doing. He was just trying to pay it forward. I don't understand why that was even a big deal, or why that was a deal at all. People took it as, oh, he's trying to little bro him or whatever. No. And then when people said, what has CJ done to make him think that he can give advice to other people? First of all, rookie of the year. How many rookies have done that recently, where you had a season like CJ Stroud, or wished your quarterback had a season like CJ Stroud in his rookie year?
Exactly.
So, I mean, anyway, regardless, it's one of those. It's ridiculous.
Caleb, is in a similar situation that CJ was last year. Basically, handed the reins to the franchise. Hey, we need you to turn us around. And I think a lot of analysts have said it's kind of unfair to some of these rookies moving forward, because now every team is going to expect their quarterback to have a rookie season like CJ Stroud. That's not the norm. That was the outlier. He's an outlier. He was not the norm. And we've seen it over and over again.
Exactly. No, but honestly, CJ Stroud, big credit to him. I know that it wasn't the outcome that was expected, but the fact, still went out there with what he had, and then honestly to put up the numbers that he did. Of course, not his best, I'm sure that he would like, but at the end of the day, putting up 215 yards and 1 touchdown. Yes, he did have the 2 interceptions to go out there. Probably not one of his better games, but the fact that he was still hustling out there to try to make those plays, trying to extend the plays when the offensive line really couldn't get anything holding on for him. I think that's a detriment. That shows, the courage and the leadership of CJ Stroud is in full effect.
Yeah, because the offensive line was struggling with those stunts, and he was, running for his life. And he was, again, like he did against the Bears, trying to make something out of nothing. Mm-hmm. It didn't work out this week, but
correct. Rios, who's your standout shoutout? Who gets the flowers from Rios on this one?
This one, I'm going to look to the guy you mentioned earlier, Tim Settle. During the offseason, he was projected to be more or less like the 3rd defensive tackle, maybe the 4th. And, with the Autry suspension, he's kind of had to step up a little bit. All those guys have had to step up a little bit. I know people made jokes that, we're settling for Tim Settle.
It sounds like he's settling in.
Yeah.
Dad joke.
Terrible dad joke. But no, he had a game, and like I said, he stepped up when clearly the focal point on the from the line was to stop Hunter and Will Anderson.
Right.
So he's able to take advantage of some of those one-on-one matchups and was able to get some pressure. I mean, obviously they couldn't really stop Aaron Jones, but he, did his part. But by that point, the game was out of hand and they were just running the clock, and that's where a lot of his yards came also. But hey, he stepped up. He got 2 sacks. I think for his career, I think he has like 8. So I mean, he had a quarter of his career sacks in one game. So hey,
yeah,
that's off to him.
Yeah, no, honestly, yeah, that's a big ups for Tim Settle. I'm telling you, he's settling in. Pause for applause. Anyway, I'm excited that he's part of the team. Yeah, like you said, people did say that the Texans were settling for him, but honestly, I don't know. It doesn't look that way. It looks like he's right where he's supposed to be. All right, I want to move on to this upcoming week. On to Jacksonville. The Jacksonville Jaguars are 0-2. They're currently right now they're currently playing the Buffalo Bills. Monday Night Football.
They're about to be 0-3. They're down 37-10 in the
37-10. Yeah. And so right now, just like the Texans, they can't get anything going. Right now, Etienne has 9 attempts, 32 yards. Bigsby's at 2 attempts for 9 yards. Trevor Lawrence has 3 rushing yards on him, just letting y'all know. But right now, Trevor Lawrence is, again, the game's not over yet, still in the 12 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter. Trevor Lawrence right now has 19-35 for 170 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception, as opposed to Josh Allen, who's 23-30, 263 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Quarterback rating currently at 142.1. Josh Allen's cooking right now. It's been pretty decent for the Bills right now. So it seems like an easy game.
That game was over in the first quarter, honestly.
I think
3 touchdowns in the first quarter.
So let's talk really quick. What is expected next week? What do we expect to see? Rios, if you want to go on this one, what do you expect to see from the Texans Jaguars game next week? Coming up, and go for it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no nice way to say it. The Texans got punched in the mouth and they got their lunch money taken yesterday. So hopefully that left a sour taste in their mouth and they want to go out there and they want to, kind of redeem themselves a little bit, especially against a divisional opponent that they, if they had Kylie Fairbairn last year, they probably would have won in Houston, but they ended up losing because their kicker couldn't make that last-second field goal. But they have a real chance to go up 3 games in the division next week, and I think that's something that the coaches need to, implement. Like, hey, guys, our best chance of making the playoffs is winning our division. Most of the division has a losing record right now. This is our chance to gain some ground in the division and build a little bit of a cushion. Because if Jacksonville goes 0-4, I mean, they were, into the season coming into the season, most people thought it was going to be between Houston and Jacksonville for the division. But I wasn't of that thinking. I was like, Jacksonville's more than likely going to be fighting for the third spot with them in Tennessee, which has been true so far because both of them are about to be 0-3. They are struggling to move the ball. They are struggling to run the ball. They're also kind of similar to Houston. They get a lot of penalties as well. Their offensive line is kind of shaky. And I think, they're going to be fired up also because they don't want to go down 0-3. In the last 20 years, only one team has made the playoffs after starting 0-3, and that was the Texans of 2019.
Yep. That's exactly it. I mean, going 0-3 is not an easy task to go through. And again, the Texans did it back in 2019, I think, with Deshaun Watson at the helm. But they haven't. It's really hard to recover from 0-3. Right now, the one thing that does concern me about this Jacksonville Jaguar game is that the Texans like to play down a competition. So if they don't take, which I don't think they will, based on the performance of against the Minnesota Vikings, I think the Texans are going to be more motivated to, to go out there, and they're going to be fired up. They're going to be pissed because of the Vikings game. So I'm predicting that I think the odds are the Texans are 4-5 up, right, against they're
almost
the Jacksonville Jaguars.
They're
almost 5 points.
They're like 4.7 point favorites right
now.
Something
favorites, right? Yeah.
It's only going to go after this Buffalo Bills game.
Right. So the Texans are. This could be that game that gets the Texans rolling again. I mean, after that, they do have Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken. So if you get the victory over Jacksonville, you go in feeling much better against Buffalo and see how you're matching up against Buffalo now, another predominantly another contender in the AFC Championship, or in the AFC. So that I think that would be the game plan going forward. Make sure that don't play to the competition for Jacksonville. Jacksonville is a team that's just about to go 0-3 unless something miraculously happens here, which I doubt. But 0-3, yes, they're going to be motivated as well. They're going to be upset, but you take advantage of that if you're the Texans. Make a statement, especially against a divisional rival, right? Win the division, like you said, and move on to Buffalo the week after, wearing the by the way, the color rush uniforms against the Buffalo game, if I'm not mistaken. So that should be a good one. But nonetheless, I think the Texans need to redeem themselves against Jacksonville this week. Because if not, I think that they're going to lose a lot of the confidence that they have this season. I think Bobby Slowick needs to be a little bit more creative, and they really need to fix the issues in the offensive line. I know it's easier said than done, but this is going into week 4. They really need to get that taken care of. I think I have a more of understanding now why CJ probably wants the home crowd to stay quiet during the offense, during the time that the offense is, and it's completely understandable because obviously, hey, it's one of those things that maybe he knows something that people don't. So it's like, you see it at practice probably, and it's like, you got to fix it, the noise level. But I mean, at this point, why not practice with the crowd level? I mean, you have, get the sound effects from Madden.
That's something they're going to have to try to do, because again, you're going to play in a lot of loud stadiums.
Right.
They can't use it as an excuse anymore. Like
they're going to play against Kansas City and Kansas City.
Right, like you're going to be on the road a lot. Half the season, obviously, you're on the road. Like you got to be more disciplined. Yeah. And I think the coaches, I think that's something they should probably implement this week. Have them practice in the little training bubble and have the music all the way up, and practice on being disciplined.
Yeah,
working on a silent count. Like these are basic football 101. Like you're obviously having trouble with the noise. Work on a silent count. I mean, you shouldn't have to work on a silent count at home, but the way these guys are undisciplined as far as jumping and getting false starts, I might have to go that route.
Exactly. At this point, they've done that before. Remember that's the only reason I brought it up. They've done that before, where they've had to practice, and they made it public that the Texans were practicing with the loud noise because of the. And other teams have done that too when they've come to NRG. Like the NRG gets loud as well. It's not like the Houston crowd is dead during when the defense is out there. The Houston crowd gets loud. So obviously, there's been other teams do that. They practice in the loud noise. They have the simulation of the crowd loud and stuff like that. So it's a very common thing for it to happen. So honestly, I think that's something that the Texans need to fix. Obviously, work on that discipline. And I mean, I still can't get that. Andre Ware's a disappointment and disgust over the radio.
He basically voiced the frustration that anyone that follows the team has with Laramie Tunsil. Like it's every game. It really is.
And I mean, the thing is, and Titus Howard, I think he also got interviewed regarding that. I forgot to mention Titus Howard. And he also talked about that, that he has to communicate with the referees and things like that. Basically, he was saying all the things that need to be done. And it's like, yeah.
Now do it.
So do it. So do it. You know what I mean? It's like, yes. So exactly. And so it's like that.
It's like we know what the problem is, but we're just not going to do anything.
So he's like, yeah, we communicate with you have to communicate with the referee. You have to make sure the referee tells you that you're lined up. You check in with them. And after he said it, the whole thing was like, yeah.
So why didn't you guys do it?
Yes, that's what checking in means. It's
like he's right there. Like, hey, ref, am I good?
Yeah, but I don't know. It's all overall. It all comes back down to discipline, player discipline, coaching, and fundamentals. I mean, that's just all it is. I think if the Texans get that right, they have they have to come into NRG Stadium with that mentality that they're going to beat Jacksonville. Like and not just beat them. Like, you got to make a statement against Jacksonville, and that's how you do it. That's what needs to happen if you're the Texans. All right, Rios, did you want to add anything else to the table, bud? It looks like we're coming to our end here.
No, that was it. Like you said, they need a bounce back game. They had it last season against the Steelers, and then the following week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They also played it in Week 4 last year, but Correct. They played Jacksonville. So hopefully, for the team, this is a bounce back game for them. Get their confidence going, because they got a real test in Week 5 against the Buffalo Bills.
They do. With that being said, guys, that's going to be our show. So please don't forget to subscribe to the Bring on the Blitz podcast right there on our YouTube channel at BBlitzPod. Also follow us on Instagram at BBlitzPod as well, and of course our X account at BBlitzPod. Of course, this is brought to you by the Esquina Network. Follow Esquina on X at Esquina. Right there, like it says, and of course follow them on Instagram. They have a lot of great stuff going on at Esquina. Lots of fun things happening there. Player interviews, you name it. I'll be interviewing the Texans mariachi soon myself. So because of Hispanic Heritage Month, so that should be something to look out for. We're gonna write a story on it, and so just to figure out, one of the only, I don't know if it's the only team, but one of the only teams with an actual mariachi band that the Texans have. So also, as you can see, the Astros are going off against the Mariners. For more Astros content and also MLB content, you got to follow these guys right here, the Full Seam Ahead guys right there, also part of the Esquina Network. Man, follow them up for all the Astros content. Follow them up for any MLB content whatsoever. Again, great stuff happening at Esquina. That's going to be it for us this week, guys, and we'll see y'all next Tuesday when the episode is premiering on YouTube. Hopefully we got the Texans have some better, hopefully it's a Texans win and the Texans can bounce back just like Rio said, so that they can get ready for Buffalo. And that's going to be it, y'all. See y'all next week. Peace.